Everybody, welcome to the channel and the stream. I am Books Nelson with the At Me Bro Show, and today we are going to be doing an admittedly unexpected breakdown of Pink Diamond Paul George. Okay, so just to quickly tell you guys how this happened. I definitely wasn't going to pick this card up because there's so many cards at his position that are so very good. I figured why bother throwing that 150k MT away when you could be putting that towards ball, right? However, I wasn't gonna go to my old account like at all. I had all of these locker codes. So I was like, let me just throw the locker codes in and see what happens. And we pulled Pink Diamond Paul George out of one of those locker codes from last week. So why? And honestly, the real reason I was coming back to this account is I'm going to sell everything so I could do a deep dive on Tyler Herro and Tim Hardaway, which I've been getting a lot of requests for. So I'm going to get into that. But let's do a deep dive on this Paul George for any of y'all who are thinking of either selling him and playing your Cam Reddish instead, or trading up for Kevin Durant, or trading down for Rudy Gay. Roko's out there. There's a lot of cards. Michael Beasley's out there. So let's go ahead and get into this card and see how he compares to those cards. I think those cards are all pretty much very close, with the big difference being I think AK-47 and Kevin Durant are a step ahead well, definitely Kevin Durant is a step ahead of everybody else offensively. AK-47 is a defensive monster. So you guys can see the ratings. He's got basically 90s and everything. 99 driving dunk, which is absolutely insane. And here we see the 89 post fade. So he's got an excellent post fade rating. As DBG likes to say, post hook doesn't really matter as long as you're 3 inches taller than your opponent. And actually, I totally agree with him on that. That is 100% true. When I'm looking at post moves, I'm just looking at the post fade, which is highly affected by your mid-range shot rating as well. So with his high midi, he's going to be excellent. Then we see the 98 lateral quickness and this 96 speed. So this is the one thing I don't like about these slower shooting guards and Tyler Herro and Tim Hardaway. It's not that they're not good cards. I just don't love the idea of them getting chased around by all of these super fast wings, and Paul George is leading the charge. So he's 75 strength. He's not going to be the greatest interior defender, but let's look at those defensive badges and see what he's bringing to the table in that regard. So he has chase down, lovely badge to have Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame clamps as well. Pogo stick, super important. That helps a lot on that interior defense because, again, you can just jump like an idiot instead of actually having to play defense. He does not have any post move lockdown or moving truck. So he's definitely a 3, much more so than a 4. But this card is going to generate 3-pointers at such a high clip. Quite frankly, you can give up post ups if you can generate those shots. All right. So we see, and so Hall of Fame quick draw and range extender. That's the magical combination. The rest of these shooting badges are all great. They're wonderful, but icing on the cake to those two major badges. And here we see most of the great badges, but he does not have. Well, he has Slithery Finisher. It's gold, not Hall of Fame. That's fine. That's totally great. All right, so let's go ahead and get into these animations while I look over at the chat. Dope D, what's up? What's up? Brandon Clark, he's unreal. Yeah, we're definitely we're gonna get into all of the Western spotlights in this coming week. We'll be covering those. All right, so Paul George, first things first, hot zones everywhere. Second thing, he's got a wonderful shot release. Let's look at his leaner. I mean, he has one of the better shot releases in the game. Leaner is outstanding. I absolutely love this silver card, so I would expect to love this card as well. And then let's get to the full court dribbles. So tell you right away, guys, he has an elite behind the back. Not the number one behind the back, but a very good one, and he also has a very good between the legs. Let's look at the crossover. So he has a big delay before his crossover, so I wouldn't recommend that. We're going to look at the Hezi cross with both left stick, which is excellent, as it usually is. A few cards have kind of a bad one, but he's not one of those. And then we'll check with the right stick as well. And you see the between the legs off of the hesitation with the right stick is actually elite. That's going to get him into this shot motion really quick, right? And I did a hop jumper, but we all know you're usually going to do a Hezi or a peekaboo off of that. So that's another really good option there to move you to the side in the full court, get you wide open 3-point shots when people think you're going for a dunk. All right, so we're going to look for the hesitation straight up crossover, not the between the legs. And that's the right stick crossover. There's a big delay on it, but it does move him very fast in the other direction. Let's see if he can cancel his crossover animation. He can. I mean, it's faster, but it doesn't move him anywhere. Let's see if the between the legs behind the back is better. No, he doesn't even like to trigger it, to be honest with you. It seems like once you hit the down behind the back, he almost There we go. Yeah, he doesn't have a good combo going up the court, but the rest of his dribbles are all elite, so that's neither here nor there. All right, let's see here. So he has a high level step back. It's not the very best step back, but it's a good step back for sure. It should combo well off of momentum dribbles. There we go. And it's also going to combo well off of between the legs dribbles. So it's a solid step back. It's smooth. It doesn't create the most space in the world, but it's good enough for him with everything else that the card is bringing to the table. All right, let's see what kind of hezi he has. And there we see the Pro 3 hezi, which, quite frankly, everything we've seen puts this card into elite status. I think this card can hang with anybody. And if someone does have that Kevin Durant or AK-47, this card's going to defend those cards very well. So, yeah, I would say he's right in line with everybody. We're going to look at the rest of his dribbles before we get too far ahead of ourselves. So, this is his momentum, fairly standard. He does have the explosive behind the back, which is fantastic for him. That's what his double momentum looks like. Momentum behind the back. And we're going to look at his double cross as well. So we see this is his kind of left to right dribble. It's okay. It doesn't move him as much as some other characters. Um, that's his hezi. So his hezi off the size up is not the greatest thing in the world. That's probably the first thing I see about him that's not like super great. His between the legs is okay. It's a little on the slower side. But he does explode out of it very quickly. Let's look at his size up dribble. So he has fairly standard size up. He's going to explode out of that really well. Not going to be a go-to game for him, but he does have it. Gorgeous layup animation. So we're going to look at his layup animations real quick. And we're going to move on to his... Well, before we move on to his dunking, we're going to look at some combos. I would say he has very high-level layup animations as well. I don't... This is subjective. This is not part of the breakdown. I don't think he's worth the asking price only because the competition is so high, right? Cam Reddish, Michael Beasley, obviously Durant. Whether you go high price or Rudy Gay, whether you go a high price or a low price, there are a lot of cards in this space that perform really well. So I think the number one reason you would pick up this card is you just love the Paul George card. And I think there's a good reason to love the Paul George card. Like I said, I'm actually in that group. I didn't love him enough to to keep him in my lineup because that's 150K, right? At least 150. That's what I saw he was auctioning for right now. But that's burning a hole in your lineup when you could be putting that somewhere else, depending on what else you have. There are free cards that perform nearly, or you could even say, in the case of Beasley, I think Beasley's really, really good offensively. So you got cards that are kind of hovering around Paul George's level. Gorgeous dunk. Um, but outside of the lack of Hall of Fame Intimidator and not the highest strength in the world and no interior post-up badges, everything else about this card is nearly perfect, to be honest with you. Like, he's got the Pro 3 hezi. He's got a gorgeous jumper. He's going to have a really, really, really quick, peekaboo and pro hezi jumper situation. So, and Hall of Fame range extender. Honestly, this is a pretty much perfect card. Pretty much perfect card. And I see why his price hasn't dropped, because I think this might be one of those situations where people just are like, those other cards are fine, but I'm too comfortable with this card. This card is just too good for me to, give up what I have going on with him. And I could see that. I could see that. I could see how this card is just kind of like, because he's perfect, you just kind of leave him in your lineup until he's outclassed. And I don't know if I would say he's outclassed by anybody, in the sense that I don't know if any of the other cards provide an advantage over Paul George. I think they're just very slightly better in their own ways, with the exception of, I do feel like the Kevin Durant. I played the AK-47. I really like the AK-47, but I feel like the Kevin Durant in a vacuum is possibly the best offensive card in the game. In a vacuum. Dwayne Wade is there as well. I put him in that same group. And then maybe after that you start talking about guys like Ball Ball or something like that. There's a few more out there that you could put in that category. But I think this Paul George, while he's not in that elite category, he definitely can, in the right hands, I think he can perform up to the level of those cards. I don't think he leaves anything to be desired. So I've been going through his dunk packages. I mean, it's an elite dunk package, and that's the main theme with this card. Is he's oh please like and subscribe if you guys are enjoying this video. Thank you so much. Um, he just does everything really really well, and you can absolutely trust him. In fact, I would say the only thing that this card doesn't do well is play shooting guard. That's it. He doesn't play the two guard like his diamond card did. But if you're running the 3-4, you know, Paul George is definitely. If I was gonna make a tier list, I would say he's and like if I would put AK-47 and Kevin Durant and possibly Carmelo Anthony. I haven't played the card yet, so I can't speak to it. But if I was gonna put those cards in the S tier, I would put Paul George as probably the only card in A plus tier. I know a lot of people would also put Kawhi Leonard there, and I haven't played with the other Kawhi to like say yes or no. My thing with Kawhi, I think Paul George has better dribbles than Kawhi, just like overall in general. The Kawhi is an excellent shooter and an excellent defender, but he's 6'7" and he can't play the two. So I view those 2 inches as a negative. Um, that will put him at A. And A's not worse, not that much worse than A plus, right? But I think this Paul George, because of his height and because of who he's going against, because you can't post hook over him if you have a 6'10" card, you're not going to just post hook over Paul George. For those reasons, I think he might wind up outlasting Kawhi. That's just my thinking on that one. I think this card will be played for a very long time until the next wave of Galaxy Opals at this position come out and they get cheaper. That's the thing. Because while Kevin Durant and AK are great, AK is about 120K more than Paul George, and KD's price has been hovering between about 390 and 460 since the most recent ball fantasy cards came out, whatever those are called. So yeah, so that's going to be the review for Paul George. Do I think he's worth his price in a vacuum? Yes, in the grand scheme of things, because there's so many cards that are nearly as good as he is at the same position. That's a decision for you guys to make. That's about how much MT you have, how often you play online, what modes you play, and how this card feels to you and how he fits your play style. But I will say the card is definitely good enough that it's a conversation you have to have. He is that good. He is at the very, very top, just a hair below AK and KD, and I see why his price hasn't dropped. Because quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that a pink diamond small forward goes for as much as he goes for. Um, because the position is just so stacked, and those are really good cards we're talking about. Your Cam Reddish, I know Cam Reddish is a 2-3, but this card's gonna be mostly playing a 3. Your Cam Reddishes, your Rokos, your Beasleys, these are all really really good cards at that position. I don't put Iguodala there; he's too short. I do think he's an okay card, but he's just a little too short. So, your Brian Scalabrinis, I'm kidding about that. But I will say Larry Bird, got Galaxy Opal Larry Bird out there. So there's a lot of cards at this position. So I thought his price might have dropped, but I see why it hasn't. You guys see him just greening after green. His dribbles are just so ridiculously smooth. He really wants to perform well as a card. You can just see he's just a really smooth card overall. And I saw somebody in the chat say they're not a good dribbler. I think this is a card it's worth learning a couple of dribble moves with. Before we get out of here, I will look at his triple threat stuff just to see what that stuff looks like. And I didn't look at his hop dunks. So let's just be thorough for those of you who might be really thinking about this card. So he has the Jimmy Butler super speed out of the triple threat. Guys, this card is definitely elite. I see why this card is holding his price, because he's just a monster. He's definitely a monster. And he's not good enough for me to pick up on my main account because I'm running KD. But man, if I had a million MT, I might just throw a Paul George on there as the backup, because I do think he might be the second best in that category if you're not running AK-47. All right, I'm gonna look at the chat before I get out of here. Giovanni Swishlord in the chat. Timmy, Matthew Thompson, what's up? What's up? Yeah, I've mentioned Matthew Thompson a bunch of times in this video. I've mentioned Matthew Thompson. I've mentioned Rudy Gay. a bunch of times in this video. I love the Rudy Gay card. The advantage he has over a lot of the cards we've mentioned is I think he's 6'10 in game. He's the biggest character model out of all of them. And he's just, Kevin Durant does have long arms. He gets into the passing lanes. But yeah, I think Rudy Gay is just like super legit. People say he's a notch below this Paul George. I think that notch is so relatively small. The biggest difference between the two cards, honestly, is just the quick draw level. This Paul George shoots so fast. He shoots so fast. But I think offensively, a player can perform to the same level with the Rudy Gay and the Paul George. I don't think the difference in price between those two cards is justified. I would even go as far as to say I don't think the difference in price between him and AK is justified. I do think Kevin Durant is so good that I think KD is probably the only one that is justified for being the price that he is. Because let me tell you guys, when you're coming up court and you go between the legs with KD and you peekaboo and go into the shot, his release is so high and so smooth and so excellent that you can legitimately run your offense through that card. He's just an absolute monster. And off of the post fades and stuff, KD is just absolutely ridiculous. And it's built into the card. I just played a friend of mine in a friendly with the New Jersey Nets on superstar difficulty, and KD hit one of those crazy long spinning fade shots, green release. I think some cards just have certain skills built into them. It's hard to get those skills out of the card with the ratings. You see it all the time with like elite slashers like Westbrook. It doesn't matter what Westbrook cards you use in the game. He's gonna slide off of people and dunk all the time. So I think with KD, it's just built into him to be an OP shooter, and you notice that when you play the card. But all of these other cards, I think it's all about your budget. And I think bang for the buck, Rudy Gay is probably the one I would say play that guy in terms of the combination of affordability and quality. Now, if you have a bunch of tokens, then Michael Beasley would be the answer to that. But if you have to grind for those tokens, or if you're already out of the pink diamond market, then I wouldn't suggest that. Um, yeah, yeah. So I would say it would be Rudy Gay, and then Paul George and AK are virtually tied. Paul is 100K cheaper than AK to my knowledge right now at the time of this recording. So that for me puts Paul George ahead of AK because I don't think AK is far enough ahead of Paul George in any category, including defense, to justify 100K. Yeah, maybe 20K or 30K, but not 100K. That's an entire Rudy Gay you're talking about, right? That's an entire Tyler Hero almost. Tyler Hero that you're talking about. So would you rather have Paul George and Tyler Hero or just AK? I think most people would rather have Paul George and Tyler Hero. So that's going to be it for this one. I left a little opinion in there because this was a later breakdown, later full breakdown, later deep dive. Hopefully watching me, just do some combos and some moves on the court here as I chat away about the card, gave you some insight into how he plays. But the guy's a monster. Think he's truly fantastic, and hopefully this was informative and helpful for those of you who might be thinking about getting the card. All right, so that's gonna cut it. That's gonna be it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe if you have not already. Thank you for watching, and peace.